The sun hung heavy in the cloudless sky, casting a relentless glare over the dusty stretch of highway. The heat rippled off the cracked asphalt, twisting the world into a shimmering mirage. Amid the dry grass and discarded scraps of trash, a single figure sat unmoving, except for the slow, shallow rise and fall of his ribcage. Max, a golden retriever no older than 3, was a shadow of his former self. His coat, once rich and gleaming like the morning sun, was now matted and dull, flecked with dirt and bits of dried leaves. His fur was tangled in knots, and in places the skin beneath was raw and irritated. His wide, soft eyes, filled with a heartbreaking mixture of confusion and fear, scanned the empty horizon. Every so often he would lift his head and listen, ears twitching at the faintest sound. A crow cawed from a nearby fence post. A truck rumbled far off on the distant road, but none of these sounds were the ones Max was waiting for. Hours earlier, a battered old pickup truck had slowed to a stop and then stopped completely on this very stretch of road. The driver, a heavy-set man with tired eyes and a rough voice, had jerked open the passenger door and pulled Max out by his collar. The dog had tried to follow, whining and tugging at the leash, but the door slammed shut, the engine roared, and the truck sped away, leaving Max behind, trembling and bewildered. Why? Max didn't understand. He had followed that truck for months, faithfully waiting as it moved from place to place. He had thought it was his home, his family. But now, abandoned, it seemed there was nowhere left to go. His heart ached in a way that went deeper than hunger or thirst. He lowered his head and let out a soft, ragged whine. The ache in his belly was sharp and constant. The few scraps of food he had found in the past days were barely enough to keep him going. His paws were sore and cracked from the rough terrain, and the sun's heat was relentless. Yet, despite the pain and fear, Max refused to give up. He lifted his head again, eyes searching. Maybe, just maybe, someone would come back for him. Maybe the truck would return. Maybe the voice that used to call his name would echo through the air once more. Max slowly stood, unsteady on his legs. His ribs pressed against his skin, but still he moved forward, drawn toward the faint sound of children playing in the distance. The laughter felt foreign to him now, like a memory from a distant past. He padded toward the sound, each step heavy but hopeful. The tall grass brushed against his sides, and the scent of wildflowers mingled with the sharp smell of gasoline and dust. Max stopped near a broken fence, ears perked. A group of children ran past, their faces flushed with excitement. One of them, a small girl with bright eyes and messy hair, glanced at him but quickly looked away. Max let out a hopeful bark, weak but determined. The girl hesitated, then slowed down, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, they simply stared. Two, souls aware of loneliness but unsure what to do about it. But then the children moved on, pulling the girl away. Max was left behind again, his tail low but twitching ever so slightly. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the shadows grew longer. Max found a patch of shade beneath a dying oak tree and curled up, his body small and fragile. The sky turned, from blue to orange, then purple, and stars began to prick the night. He closed his eyes, letting the darkness swallow the ache for a little while. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Max's ears twitched at the mournful sound, but he didn't answer, because he was waiting for a sign. Waiting for a friend. Waiting for someone who could see past the dirt and hunger and look deep into the heart of a dog who had only ever wanted to be loved. The morning light crept slowly over the horizon, casting a pale gold glow across the dusty fields where Max lay curled beneath the oak tree. The air was cool for now, but Max knew the sun would soon scorch the earth again. His bones ached from the cold night and the stiffness of sleeping on hard ground. Hunger gnawed relentlessly at his belly, sharp and unforgiving. Max stirred, his throat dry and tongue rough. He rose unsteadily to his feet, muscles weak and trembling. His eyes, once bright and trusting, had grown wary and cautious. The world around him had become a strange and dangerous place, one where food was scarce, shelter even rarer, and kindness almost unheard of. He wandered slowly along the edge of a gravel road, nose twitching as he sniffed the air. Every scent told a story A rabbit had passed through here. A human had left scraps in a rusty trash can nearby. The faint smell of gasoline lingered, mixing with the sweet scent of wildflowers. Max's stomach growled loudly, reminding him he hadn't eaten since the day before. He trotted toward the trash can, eyes brightening with hope. Carefully he pawed at the top, sending a clatter of empty cans to the ground. His nose dug deeper, sniffing for anything edible. A leftover sandwich, a scrap of meat, a crust of bread. But all he found were bits of spoiled fruit and old wrappers, useless to his empty stomach. Frustrated, Max moved on. Each step was slow and heavy. The sharp stones cut into his paw pads, and dust clung to his matted coat. He paused to rest beneath a crumbling porch, where the shadow of a nearby house offered brief refuge from the harsh sun. From inside the house, muffled voices drifted through an open window. Max's ears perked up. He could hear laughter, the clatter of dishes, the warmth of a life that felt out of reach. But then a loud bark echoed from behind the fence. A bigger, tougher dog charged at Max, teeth bared and growling fiercely. Max lowered his head, eyes wide with fear, and slowly backed, away, his heart pounding like a drum. He ran without looking back, sprinting down a dusty lane, his legs burning with effort. When he finally stopped, gasping for breath under a thorny bush, the world felt even colder, lonelier. Days passed in a blur of hunger, fear, and aching loneliness. Max learned to hide from people who shouted or threw stones. He avoided cars and loud noises, retreating deeper into the forgotten corners of the town. Yet every night, as darkness fell, Max would look up at the stars and remember the warmth of a loving hand, the sound of a gentle voice calling his name. He missed those moments so fiercely it made his chest ache. One night, under the pale glow of the moon, Max curled into a tight ball beneath a fallen tree. His breath came out in shallow puffs, fogging the cold air. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying the distant sounds of dogs barking, children playing, and life going on without him. Somewhere, in the distance, a firefly blinked softly, a tiny flicker of light in the vast darkness. Max's eyes fluttered closed, and for a moment he dreamed. He dreamed of a warm bed, soft blankets, and a family who would never leave him behind. But when he woke, the cold bit at his ribs again, and hunger was still there, sharp and unyielding. The fourth day, Max's luck changed in the smallest way. A woman leaving her house spotted him limping across the street. She called out, but Max was too frightened to come closer. She left a bowl of water and a small piece of chicken on the porch and watched from a distance. Max hesitated, then cautiously approached the food. Hunger won over fear. He ate quickly, lapping up water, then disappeared into the brush before the woman could get any closer. Though the kindness was brief and distant, it was a seed of hope in Max's weary heart. That same day, a young girl named Ellie would soon spot Max and begin a story that neither of them could have imagined, a story of rescue, trust, and tears that would heal the deepest wounds. But for now, Max was still alone, still lost, and still waiting for a miracle. Ellie had always loved animals. Even at 10 years old, she carried a kindness in her heart that was rare in their small town. That afternoon, as she walked home from school, her eyes caught something unusual by the edge of the road. A small, golden shape crouched near a broken fence. At first she thought it might be a stray cat or a wild animal, but as she stepped closer, her breath caught. It was a dog, thin, dirty, and limping, with deep, sorrowful eyes that seemed to tell a story no one else noticed. Ellie's heart tightened in her chest. She knelt down slowly, not wanting to scare him. "Hey, boy," she whispered softly, pulling a half-eaten sandwich from her backpack. "Are you hungry?" The dog looked up at her, his tail barely twitching, but hope flickered in his eyes. Max sniffed cautiously, inching forward until he took the sandwich with gentle teeth. Ellie smiled, relieved that he trusted her even a little. For a moment they sat quietly together. Ellie stroked his matted fur, her small hands trembling. "You look like you've been through a lot," she said, voice breaking. "I wish I could help you." But help wasn't easy. Max's limp was worse than she had thought, and the skin beneath his dirty coat showed signs of old wounds. Still, Ellie's determination didn't falter. She promised herself she'd find out where he came from, who he was, and if someone was looking for him. When her father arrived to pick her up, Max's eyes flickered with fear. He crouched low, ready to bolt. Ellie called softly, "It's okay, Max, I'm not going to hurt you." Her father suggested they take him to a shelter, but Ellie shook her head. "Not yet. I want to see if someone knows him first." Over the next few days, Ellie returned to the spot, bringing food and water, sitting quietly so Max could grow used to her presence. She even named him Max, after the brave dog in a storybook she loved. But each time someone approached, Max flinched. The world had taught him not to trust easily. Ellie's heart broke a little more with every glimpse of his pain. At school, Ellie told her friends about Max, showing them pictures she'd taken. Some teased her for wasting time on a stray dog, but others helped by sharing posts on social media, hoping someone might recognize him. That night, Ellie lay awake, thinking of Max shivering under the oak tree, lost and alone. She wished she could do more, but felt helpless. All she had was hope. Max, meanwhile, was growing stronger in the safety of Ellie's visits, but his past remained a shadow he couldn't escape. Every distant car, every loud shout, triggered old fears. But Ellie's presence was a balm, slowly, thawing the frozen edges of his heart. One afternoon, while Ellie sat beside Max, a woman from town approached. She frowned as she looked at Max. "That dog looks familiar," she said thoughtfully. "Have you tried posting about him?" Ellie nodded eagerly, showing her the posts online. The woman's eyes softened. "I'll ask around at the vet's office. Sometimes people report lost pets there." Ellie smiled gratefully. For the first time, it felt like a real chance. Maybe Max's story wasn't over yet. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, Max lay beside Ellie on the porch steps. His breathing was slow and steady. For the first time in a long time, he felt a flicker of safety. Ellie looked down at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "I promise, Max, I won't let you down." But neither of them knew that soon. A message would arrive that would change everything. A message from a woman miles away who might hold the key to Max's true story. Hook. The night was quiet, but somewhere far away a heart was beating faster, a heart waiting to be reunited with its lost friend. That night, Ellie sat at the kitchen table, her fingers trembling as she typed the last words of her post. The photo showed Max lying in the grass, his fur dirty, but eyes full of quiet hope. "Lost and alone, this sweet dog needs help. If anyone knows him, please reach out." She hit share and watched as the post went live. For a small town, social media could be powerful, and Ellie hoped this would be the lifeline Max desperately needed. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Comments poured in. Some were kind-hearted. "I'm so sorry, poor baby. Have you checked the shelter? We saw a dog like this near the park last week." Others were less helpful. "Strays are everywhere, can't save them all. Why don't you just take him to the pound?" But Ellie didn't let the negativity stop her. Every message was a chance. The post was shared hundreds of times in the following days. Ellie's family helped, forwarding it to friends, neighbors, even local vets. Every evening, Ellie refreshed the page, hoping for news. But Max was still out there, limping and afraid, avoiding the growing crowd of strangers who wanted to help, but couldn't reach him. One afternoon, Ellie and her father drove around town, calling Max's name in quiet neighborhoods and busy streets. Max appeared at the edge of a field once, but bolted when a car passed. His trust was fragile. Ellie wished she could explain to Max that not all people wanted to hurt him. That evening, back at home, Ellie stared at her phone. A new message caught her eye from an unknown number. "Is this the dog you're looking for?" The message included a photo, a golden retriever, older but unmistakably the same dog. The man's message read, "I think this might be Rusty. He's been missing for over a year." Ellie's heart leapt. Rusty? She'd never heard the name before. The dog in the picture looked healthier, happier, a far cry from Max's current state. Her fingers shook as she replied, "Where did you find this picture?" The man answered, "My mother posted it on a local group. She recognized the dog as hers, lost after a move last year. She's been searching ever since." Ellie showed the message to her father, who nodded thoughtfully. We need to get in touch with her. This could be the family Max has been waiting for. Over the next days, Ellie's world shifted. She messaged the woman, Margaret, whose voice was warm but shaky with hope. Margaret described Rusty as a beloved family member, missing for months and never forgotten. The connection felt fragile but real, a fragile thread weaving two stories together. Meanwhile, Max seemed to sense the change. Though still wary, he began to allow Ellie's gentle touch more often. His limp was slower to heal, but his spirit showed small signs of life. Together, Ellie and her family prepared for what might be the next chapter, a reunion neither Max nor Margaret could yet imagine, but the road ahead was uncertain. Would Max remember the family who once loved him? Would Margaret's hope be rewarded after so long? And what if Max was too broken to come home? One evening, Ellie sat outside watching the stars blink awake one by one. Max lay beside her, head resting on her knee. The silence between them was filled with unspoken promises and fragile hope. Tomorrow, Ellie whispered, tomorrow we'll find out. Hook. Somewhere, miles away, a woman clutched a faded photo and whispered a prayer. The past and present were about to collide, and nothing would ever be the same. The morning sun spilled gold across the sky as Ellie's family packed the car. Today was the day they would meet Margaret, the woman who might hold the key to Max's past, a past filled with love and loss. Max sat quietly in the back seat, his head resting on Ellie's lap. His breathing was steady but calm, as if he sensed something important was about to happen. Ellie gently stroked his fur, whispering soothing words. We're going to find your home, Max. I promise. The drive was long and winding, passing through sleepy towns and endless stretches of fields. Ellie glanced out the window, imagining what Max's life had once been like. The laughter, the family dinners, the warm nights by the fireplace. But her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden bark. Max lifted his head, ears perked, eyes wide with surprise. Ellie looked back and smiled. You remember something, don't you? When they arrived at a small cottage nestled in the woods, a woman was waiting on the porch. Margaret's eyes shone with a mix of hope and uncertainty as Ellie approached with Max. Is this him? Margaret asked softly, reaching out a trembling hand. Max's tail gave a hesitant wag, and his eyes locked with Margaret's. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then, slowly, Max rose on unsteady legs and stepped forward, pressing his head into Margaret's palm. Tears welled in Margaret's eyes as she whispered, Rusty, my Rusty. Ellie watched, heart pounding. She saw the years of separation melt away in that one touch, a reunion born from love and endurance. Margaret invited them inside, where photographs lined the walls. One showed a young Rusty bounding through a sunlit yard, golden fur gleaming, eyes sparkling with joy. Ellie couldn't help but smile at the sight of the dog Max once was. Margaret explained the painful story, how a sudden move had scattered the family, and how Rusty had slipped away in the chaos, lost and alone. She had searched tirelessly, posting flyers, calling shelters, and hoping for a miracle. And now, here he was. Max's limp was a silent testimony to his hard journey, but the spark of his old spirit was returning. Over the next days, Ellie helped Margaret care for Max, bathing away the dirt, treating his wounds, and filling his belly with nourishing food. Max slowly learned to trust again, nuzzling into Margaret's embrace and wagging his tail with growing confidence. But the past wasn't done with him yet. One evening, as Max lay by the fireplace, ears twitching at every sound, a knock echoed at the door. Margaret opened it to find a man standing there, his face weary but hopeful. I'm Peter, he said softly. Rusty was my dog too. We lost him the same day we lost each other. Peter explained how the family had been torn apart by sudden hardships, forcing difficult choices and separation. He had searched for Rusty relentlessly, but feared the worst. Now, reunited, the family began to heal piece by piece. Max, no longer just a lost dog but a symbol of hope, wove himself into their lives once more. And Ellie? She watched with quiet pride, knowing her small act of kindness had changed everything. That night, as the family sat together, Max curled at their feet, eyes closed in peaceful sleep. The journey home had been long, but finally, Max was where he belonged. Days passed slowly at the cottage, each one weaving the fractured threads of Max's story into a tapestry of healing and hope. The once lost and trembling dog was beginning to regain pieces of himself, and with each small victory, the bond between Max and his family grew stronger. Margaret and Peter took turns caring for Max, their hands gentle and patient. They watched as he cautiously explored the garden, sniffing at new scents, his tail wagging tentatively when he caught a familiar smell, the scent of home. Ellie came often, her laughter filling the quiet house like sunshine, her presence a balm for the healing hearts. Max's limp remained, a reminder of the harsh journey he had endured, but it grew less painful as the days warmed and his muscles grew stronger. The wounds beneath his fur healed, revealing soft golden patches where dirt and scars had once hidden. One afternoon, as Max rested in the sun-dappled grass, Margaret sat beside him, tears glistening in her eyes. "I've been through so much, Rusty," she whispered, stroking his head. "But you're safe now. We'll never let you go again." Max lifted his head, eyes filled with trust and something new, joy. That evening, the family gathered around the fireplace, sharing stories from the past year. Margaret and Peter spoke of the sudden move that had torn their lives apart, the heartbreak of losing Rusty, and the hope that had never truly faded. Ellie listened, her heart swelling with pride and happiness. She never imagined that a stray dog she found by the roadside could hold such a powerful story, one of loss, love, and reunion. But healing wasn't just for Max. Margaret and Peter too felt the wounds of separation slowly mend. Their shared love for Rusty became a bridge, reconnecting them after months apart. One night, as the fire crackled softly, Margaret looked at Ellie and said, "You saved him." "We all owe you so much," Ellie smiled shyly. "I just wanted him to have a chance." As the days turned to weeks, Max grew bolder. He played with Peter's grandchildren, his tail wagging furiously as children chased him through the garden. He greeted neighbors with shy curiosity and slept soundly through the night, no longer haunted by the shadows of fear. Yet, every so often, Max would pause by the window, eyes distant and thoughtful. It was as if the ghost of his past still whispered in the breeze. One afternoon, while Ellie was visiting, Max suddenly bolted from the yard, chasing after a butterfly. He darted down the path and stopped at the edge of the woods, nose to the E. Drowned Ellie hurried after him, calling his name. Max turned, eyes shining with excitement. Ellie realized he wasn't just chasing a butterfly, he was chasing hope. Together they walked deeper into the woods, Max leading with confidence. And in that moment, Ellie knew. Max was no longer lost. Not really. His journey had changed him, made him stronger. But now, surrounded by love, he was finally free. As the sun set, painting the sky with hues of pink and purple, Ellie knelt beside Max, wrapping her arms around him. "You're home, Max," she whispered. "You're finally home." With Max settled in the warmth of the family home, life began to find a new rhythm. Days flowed with laughter, love, and the gentle routines that marked a fresh start for all of them. Max was no longer the lost, trembling dog hiding in shadows. He was a beloved companion, tail wagging with eager joy, eyes bright with the promise of tomorrow. Ellie visited often, her bond with Max deepening with every playful bark and happy nuzzle. She delighted in watching him romp through the garden, chasing balls and rolling in the soft grass. But what she treasured most were the quiet moments, Max resting his head on her lap, eyes closing in contentment, a silent thank you between them. Margaret and Peter, too, found solace in Max's return. The dog who had once been a symbol of heartbreak now embodied hope and healing. They worked together to rebuild their lives, finding comfort in each other's presence and in the loyal dog who had never stopped believing. One chilly morning, as frost kissed the edges of the windows, Ellie and Margaret sat together over tea. They talked about what the future might hold. plans to help other lost animals, ways to spread kindness in their community. Ellie's eyes sparkled with determination. "Max's story has to help others," she said. "There are so many like him, lost and scared. We can't forget them." Margaret smiled, nodding. "He's given us all a second chance. We owe it to him and to them to keep that hope alive." Meanwhile, Max continued to surprise everyone with his resilience. His limp had almost vanished, replaced by a steady, confident gait. He was no longer afraid of loud noises or strangers. Instead, he greeted visitors with a friendly bark and a wagging tail, eager to make new friends. One afternoon, as Peter worked in the garden, Max trotted up and dropped a small muddy ball at his feet, a game invite impossible to resist. Peter laughed heartily, tossing the ball across the yard. Max chased after it with gleeful abandon, ears flapping, eyes shining with pure happiness. It was a scene so full of life and promise that even the neighbors paused to smile, reminded that sometimes the smallest hearts carry the biggest strength. But, amid the joy, Ellie never forgot the night Max had looked up and cried real tears, the night their lives changed forever. That moment was a reminder of pain and hope intertwined, a story worth telling. Inspired, Ellie began writing about Max's journey, the loss, the loneliness, and the incredible reunion. She shared it online, weaving words that touched hearts and inspired action. Messages poured in from strangers moved by Max's story, many offering to help other lost animals in their communities. Ellie realized that a single act of kindness could ripple far beyond what she'd imagined. One day, as Ellie walked Max along the familiar paths near the cottage, she felt a gentle breeze and looked up at the clear blue sky. "Thank you, Max," she whispered, "for trusting me, for teaching me what hope really means." Max paused, turning to look at her with eyes full of love, and in that moment Ellie knew that sometimes the lost are just waiting to be found. Their journey was over, but their story was just beginning. The sun rose gently over the little cottage, casting warm light on the world, as if blessing the new chapter unfolding. Max, once lost and alone, now thrived in the embrace of a family who loved him fiercely. But even as his days filled with joy, a part of his story remained unfinished. One last thread waiting to be tied. Ellie sat on the porch steps, Max curled beside her, his breathing slow and peaceful. She ran her fingers through his soft fur and smiled. From the moment she first saw him, scared and trembling by the roadside, to now, safe, loved and whole, Max had changed everything. Just then, Margaret came out carrying a small envelope. "It arrived today," she said softly. Ellie's eyes widened. The envelope was from the animal rescue organization that had taken Max's microchip number from the shelter where he'd been scanned weeks earlier. Inside was confirmation. Max was registered under a family's name, and they had been searching for him all this time. Margaret and Peter exchanged a glance. "There's more," Margaret said, opening the letter carefully. It was a message from a woman named Linda, Max's original owner. Linda's words spilled onto the page, filled with love, regret, and hope. She told of how Max had been her loyal companion for years, how a tragic accident during a family move had separated them. Linda's heart had never stopped aching for Max, and she had never given up searching. Tears spilled down Ellie's cheeks as she read aloud the letter. Max's story was finally coming full circle. The next day, arrangements were made for Linda to visit. Ellie and the family prepared, unsure what to expect. Would Max remember her? Would the reunion be joyful or painful? When Linda arrived, trembling with anticipation, Max's ears perked up. Slowly he lifted his head and looked toward her. Recognition sparked in his eyes, a deep, familiar light that made Linda's breath catch. "Max," she whispered, voice breaking. Max rose and walked toward Linda, tail wagging slowly but surely. He nudged her hand, licking her fingers gently. The years apart melted away in that moment, replaced by a bond stronger than time or distance. Linda knelt, hugging Max tightly. "I'm so sorry I lost you," she said, tears streaming. "I never stopped looking for you." Margaret, Peter, and Ellie watched, hearts full. This reunion was everything they'd hoped for, and more. Over the next hours, stories were shared, laughter filled the room, and Max basked in the love that had been, waiting for him all along. But there was an unexpected truth. Linda's family situation had changed. She had moved to a city far away, and while she could care for Max, it wasn't the life he had come to know in this quiet town. After heartfelt discussions, it was agreed that Max would stay with Margaret, Peter, and Ellie, his new family who had rescued him from loneliness and fear. Linda smiled through her tears, grateful for the kindness that had kept Max safe. "You gave him a second chance," she said, "and for that I'm forever thankful." Max seemed to understand, his tail wagging in quiet contentment. He was home. That evening, as the stars blanketed the sky, Ellie sat on the porch once more. Max lay beside her, breathing steady and warm. She whispered, "You found your way back, Max, from lost and alone, to loved and forever." And with that, Max closed his eyes, his heart finally at peace.